You're on CYInterview.
I'm Chris Shandak, featured columnist Jay Bilstein is with me. For the first time since March, some Las Vegas shows are getting back to production on the Las Vegas Strip. Today we welcome dance captain Olivia Richards of the show X Country that takes place at Harrah's Las Vegas Hotel and Casino. Olivia, thanks so much for being back with us on CYInterview. How are you? It's good to speak with you again.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be back.
So let me just say that you guys started back a few days ago. How did it feel to perform for the first time in many months?
You know, to be honest, there's a lot of emotions involved with it. On one hand, we've all been unemployed for about 7 months, so, you know, it's been a long time waiting, and we really didn't know when we would come back. We got the go-ahead, you know, only a few weeks before we reopened up, so we didn't have a lot of prep time, but overall, it's a really exciting experience. This is our job, and we love it. It's also our passion. We've all been dancing our whole lives. We're all trained dancers, and in addition to that, we're all really good friends. So ultimately, always having a job is great, and then there's always a little bit of nerves coming back, being on the stage again, but we were all really surprised with how easily everything fell right back into place and how great it felt to be dancing together on stage again.
To deal with social distancing and the impact of COVID-19, what is the room set up like for this crowd?
That's a great question. So our room is a 350-seat capacity, and we've taken it down to 80 guests. So we're only having 80 guests in our showroom. They're all social distance, 6 feet apart, and our ushers are being very strict about making sure all of our guests are wearing masks. We're wearing masks. We're really far away from our audience. So previously the audience was really close up, and now they're quite a bit far back, which is providing a little bit different of an experience. They're getting to kind of see the whole thing from a far away distance, and I think it's actually providing a really cool thing for people to be able to come and see live entertainment. And backstage, we're taking a lot of precautions. A lot of sanitation is happening. Everyone's got their PPE. We're all making sure that we're very focused on strictly adhering to all of the guidelines and rules that have been set forth for us by Caesars.
What has the reaction been like so far from the crowd, and what has it been like performing under these not normal circumstances?
I think the crowd has been really great. People are so excited to get back and to be seeing live performances. You know, it's been so long, and I think people didn't realize how much they've missed being in an audience and being a part of something that is really special, live performance, and especially burlesque shows like us, we bring such a fun, sexy feel to the night, and I think everyone's been just really excited and grateful to have the opportunity to come. And performing under the circumstances is just definitely an adjustment period. You know, it's a learning process. We're all adjusting. We're trying to make sure that both the performers, the staff, and that the audience members are all safe, but it's also a really enjoyable experience, and a fun one at that as well.
Jay.
Olivia, turning to the type of show, and you just use the term burlesque, do you, from your experience, find that dancing in a review that has a specific theme, do you find it to be more or less challenging as a dancer?
You know, the reality is that as a dancer, our job is to be as versatile as possible. So I actually find it really fun because our show does have a theme, but there are a lot of different themes within the theme. You know what I'm saying? So it is country music themed, but, you know, sometimes it's sultry and sometimes it's, you know, fun, and it goes back and forth. We play these different characters. So within the country theme, we kind of get to, you know, sometimes I'm a little bit dominatrixy, and sometimes I'm a little bit more, you know, soft. And so I find it fun that we get to have this one consistent theme, but then at the same time, we get to bring all different aspects of our personality, and we bring a little bit of that acting training into the performance with all the different kinds of roles we get to play.
Speaking about your training, what kind of dance background do you have specifically?
So I grew up in Oklahoma, and I trained in ballet, jazz, and tap. And then from there, I actually went to the University of Central Oklahoma as a dance major, where I then got educated further on my jazz, tap, and ballet, but also into modern and hip-hop.
Well, you know what, you said Oklahoma, and you caught me totally off guard. a place I absolutely love. I've known a lot of people who've come out of Oklahoma.
Oh, really?
What a great place. There's also something else. I don't think I've ever met somebody from Oklahoma where I haven't said, what a great person. I don't know if it's something that they feed you there or it's in the water, but just what a great group of folks out of Oklahoma. What city do you hail from, or what town?
So I grew up in a small town called Owasso that's just north of Tulsa, and my family still lives there. And I actually went to school in Edmond. UCO is in Edmond. And, you know, I absolutely agree with you. One of the things of Oklahoma that I learned growing up is that if you're ever on the side of the road with car trouble, you're going to have so many people stopping. And there's a lot of that southern hospitality, and there's a lot of kind folks that reside in Oklahoma.
Yeah, no, it's just an unbelievably great place. It's very interesting to hear that you're from there. What brought you originally to Las Vegas?
I wanted to dance. You know, I had aspirations of being a dancer professionally my whole life, and there aren't a lot of options for professional dance in Oklahoma. I did do a company there called Race, and that was a fun jazz dance community that I got to perform with. And then when I was seeking something bigger, I considered New York or LA, but it's just such a huge financial commitment, being that the cost of living in those cities is so much more expensive than what Oklahoma is. And one of my mentors back home suggested, well, what about Las Vegas? And it was something I hadn't considered. So, you know, I kind of did the American dream where I sold everything I had and I moved out to Vegas with just under $1,000 in my bank account. I didn't know anybody and I didn't have a job, and I had to come here and struggle for a while before I found my footing. And once I did, it's been nothing but a great journey.
Let's turn back to the pandemic challenge.
Sure.
And so you say, hey, we've been unemployed for 7 months. That's rough in all kinds of ways. Let's talk about perhaps a possible positive. I've known a lot of dancers. I've worked with some dancers. Way back when Noah was building an ark, I worked in a gym in New York City, which is where I'm from, with a lot of Broadway dancers whose side gig was working as a personal trainer or teaching aerobics or something of that nature, because, right, you know, they'd work in one Broadway show and then the run would end or whatever it was, and then they didn't necessarily pick up work immediately, so they needed to pay the rent. And back then you could actually pay the rent by doing those type of things. I don't know if that's possible in New York City right now, though I have read recently that rents have come down. The dancers I know are some of the hardest training athletes I have ever met. Especially when they work, because it's, you know, you'd be dancing 5-6 days a week, plus training on the side and so forth, and everything you have to do to stay at an appropriate weight and you know, keep your skills honed to the razor's edge. In the 7 months you've been off, did you find that some chronic injuries you might have healed up because you didn't have to perform with the same level of frequency?
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because on one hand, you know, it was really nice to take a little bit of a break from being a showgirl. There are a lot of demands in terms of physically, you know, what you have to look like, and also just the demand of performing and, you know, putting on makeup and doing your hair every single day. It's a dream come true, but it also can take its toll on you. So for a little while, I really enjoyed a chance to take a break. And like you said, I've been very fortunate to not have any major injuries, but I did get to let my body take a rest, you know, let my face breathe a little bit from all of the makeup I usually put on. And so there was some time where I really enjoyed, like, just settling down for a moment, taking a breath, getting a little break, you know, because dancers, especially performers here in Vegas, we don't get an off season. A lot of athletes have specified off seasons. We don't typically have that. So to begin with, I just started off just relaxing, and then once I kind of got bored, that's when I started. I'm actually a Pilates teacher. You know, you mentioned fitness, and I teach Pilates, I teach cycle, so I started doing videos at home and selling them for $5 to my fellow performers. I started making Pilates classes, and where my dogs were walking around in the background, and it was in my living room, my very small apartment living room, it was really nice to, A, work out, and B, feel like I was helping other people to get their workouts in while they were in quarantine.
Do you have a Pilates reformer in your home?
No, I specialize in mat Pilates.
I got you.
Yeah, so instead of a big piece of equipment, it's more about what you can do with your own body and small equipment like resistance bands and hand weights.
Have you been exposed to and utilized such things like the Alexander technique and things that go in that direction?
Yeah, I studied a lot of the Alexander technique when I was in college, and now that I'm out of there, a lot of my training tends to focus more on yoga and Pilates and work with kettlebells and things like that, specifically because Pilates was created in order to help dancers rehabilitate. Joseph Pilates actually used to get a lot of professional dancers who were broken or had injuries and needed to be rehabilitated. And Pilates and yoga are so safe for the body that I feel like my focus and training in those is helping me to extend my dance career.
Was there any kind of challenge, and I know there's been a challenge for people in general, but for you as a dancer, you had a lot of time off. Las Vegas is a place with a lot of delicious food. I know, unfortunately, a lot of the restaurants and great places to eat had been shut, but then a lot had reopened and it was taken and so forth. Did you find it a challenge to stay at dance weight during the last 7 months? And if so, what tips could you give to our listeners to say, listen, I know you're not getting the activity you used to, you're not getting out, but here's what worked for me?
For me, I actually let myself for a couple of months sort of take a break from being so strict about my weight. Now, that being said, I was still doing everything in moderation. You know what I mean? I was going, you know what, I'm going to take this opportunity to enjoy myself a little bit more and relax. And then once gyms started opening up, I got right back into it. I made a point to, start a regimen. I drink about a gallon of water every day, and I think that's one of the biggest things that's helped me. Hydration turns out that it's all it's cracked up to be. My skin looks better. I find myself being more full, and a lot of times we confuse hunger for what is actually dehydration. So I would recommend start by drinking water, and the truth is that once gyms open back up and once we got to start looking out for shows to open back up, it was really a lot easier to find that motivation to be eating better and to be training more often. So it was nice to have a break from it. It was nice to sort of let myself relax. And then in the last couple of months, I started to find that focus again, find that motivation to be able to come back and almost feel like better than I did before.
Well, you're really talking my language, because I'm a great believer in, staying well hydrated, and what you say is so true. So many times I find we confuse thirst with hunger, and not only that, I think a lot of times we're eating out of emotional need, not out of physiological demand. Physiological demand is, wow, we've expended a lot of energy and the body's crying out for food, but I'm not knowledgeable about growing up in Oklahoma, but I can't imagine it was too different than growing up in New York City, in that when I used to come home from school in public school, there'd be milk and cookies on the table. And milk and cookies, not that it's the best thing on earth necessarily to have cookies, although they are delicious, but you come home, there's a glass of milk, there are a few chocolate chip cookies, and somehow this becomes inexorably tied to the idea of your mom loves you, right? This is one of the ways that you're shown that you're loved. I suspect it's pretty similar in Oklahoma, or maybe on the weekend, there was a fresh baked pie or whatever it is. And we get this sense that being filled up with food somehow means we're cared for. At least that's how I contextualize it. And when you started talking about water, if I ever really get hungry where I'm just going to start to eat anything, a couple of glasses of water, a salad, and a fruit before I think about what I'm going to have, a lot of times I don't want to have anything after that. Well, and go ahead.
Emotional eating. You mentioned emotional eating before, and I think that's what a lot of people struggle, not only during the quarantine, but during this whole pandemic, everyone's stressed out, and during the quarantine, you're working with, fighting boredom and not having a schedule. And, it's so easy to get in that routine of, also drinking, even just to create an experience. You're bored and you haven't done anything, so it's easy to open up a bottle of wine. And a lot of times, whenever you're feeling hydrated, and you have that glass of wine or whatever, you end up feeling dehydrated and you feel just gross the next day. So I'm a really big believer in everything in moderation. There was a time in my life when I was almost too strict, to where when I did let myself, have a treat, I had way too much of that treat. And I think the more that you let yourself, okay, I'm going to find time to work in a couple glasses of wine or a cookie or whatever it may be, the more you're feeling a lot more sane. I think the more likely you are to succeed. So the moderation thing, I know that, everyone says that, but it really is the truth, especially for me.
Olivia, I've used the term to death when speaking to dancers, but I believe it's kind of worth using this term again. I see dancers not simply as athletes, but as artletes, right? Because it's not just about the athletic ability to move and the coordination and everything, but you said it before. It's also the presentation. It's the aesthetic. Talked about hair and makeup and everything else. Yeah. And so, again, experientially, the dancers I've known are probably some of the most disciplined athletes around, and that's why I always love when good folks like yourself are able to kind of give out tips, because you guys got to be on it virtually 24/7. I know, like you said, hey, sometimes you could be too strict, but, dancers really have to have it all together, not just in their ability to move, but also in how they present themselves. That being said, the butterflies are kind of, from what I understand, they've kind of simmered down. You're back, you're performing, the team's back together. What do you see for the future? Where do you think we will be in the next 6 months, in the next year in Las Vegas?
Well, I hope that a lot of our fellow performers are able to start slowly going back to work. My fellow castmates and I have been really lucky to be back getting a paycheck and not only being financially, stable again, but also emotionally stable. We're so passionate about performing, and we love being in front of an audience. We love our craft. So I really hope for that for my fellow brothers and sisters in the entertainment industry. And along with that, I hope that we can get control of the pandemic. I hope that not just for us, but for worldwide, so that there can be less deaths and more people working, more normalcy. I hope in a year to see that we're back to normal, no masks, and hoping that our audience can move closer and that we can, go back to, one of the things we've adjusted is that we no longer go into the audience. The audience is still going to get an awesome experience, but I'm hoping that within a year we'll be able to be back to dancing within the audience. But it's really important that the listeners know how important safety is to us, how important it is that we are, following all of the guidelines. We take it really seriously. We're trying the best we can to set an example for all the fellow performers and all the other shows on the Strip, that we can not only provide amazing entertainment, but do it in a safe way.
Well, Olivia, from your mouth to God's ears, as they say, and I hope the next time you're back with us, God willing, we'll be able to say, wow, do you remember what that was like? It was like a bad dream and everything's back to normal. I'm convinced that given enough time, and hopefully sooner rather than later, things will be beyond back to normal. Things will be better than ever in the entertainment capital of the world, and it's certainly been an absolute pleasure to have you here with us. Chris?
You can catch Olivia Richards and the rest of the cast of X Country at Harrah's Las Vegas Hotel and Casino. They are back open on the Las Vegas Strip. Olivia, thanks so much for being with us on CYInterview. Hang on with us.
Thank you so much.